John, it's your favorite time.
Oh,
is it Anniversary Corner?
Yeah, it's Anniversary Corner, baby.
Yeah.
It's Anniversary Corner, baby.
This occurred to me last week, and I forgot about it, but now it's all coming back to me.
This is ATP episode 700. 700 that you two and me have sat here, except one Prisoner Exchange episode. It's been all three of us for 700 episodes, which is absolutely bananas. And
700 regular episodes. When I realized last week that this was happening, I did a small bit of math so I could do it on this week when you booby trapped me with it, which I knew that you would. So obviously we have our member specials, and we've done one-off things like interview shows and stuff like that. So it's actually obviously more than 700. But for the regular episodes, the not interview, not member special, not blah, 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 we've done 52 regular episodes per year for 13.4615 years, which is not quite as round. I know it's episode 700, but it's not as exciting as the year-round number. So anyway, we've been doing this for a while.
So I don't have the author's name in front of me, and I'm deeply sorry about that. But there is a listener who has been working on for like a year or two now, catATP.fm, CATATP.fm. This is an absolutely incredible resource. This is taking the spirit of what Underscore done years ago about running shows through a transcription service and trying to make the best of what comes out of it. And obviously with today's AI stuff, it's quite a bit more impressive than it was years ago. There's a handful of these like Underscores, like CatATP, that exist. And this one I happened to look at recently, and there are statistics. So if you go to catATP.fm/statistics, you can see that as of, I think, this most recent episode, not the one we're actually recording now, obviously, but as of 699, total length of all the episodes, 1,421 hours, 6 minutes, and 13 seconds. Just astonishing.
Yeah, and CatATP, by the way, like what a level up that is from like everything that's come before, because the author is using AI heavily and cleverly, and wow, it's advanced. It's really something.
Yeah, at some point, I'd probably like to talk a little more about CatATP, because there's some interesting stuff here. And the author, who, again, I don't have the email in front of me, I'm so sorry. But they had emailed us, and among other things, they had come up with a visualization of what sections of the last couple of episodes were cut from the bootleg to the released version, which I thought was a really interesting visualization of what you're missing out on if you don't listen to the bootleg. Now, what you're getting if you don't listen to the bootleg is Marco's genuinely, not sarcasm, genuinely exquisite edits. You're getting much better audio quality, but you're missing some of the nonsense and shenanigans that you would hear only in the bootleg. And if I remember, I will post one such example image and link it in the show notes. I don't have it handy as we speak, but it is really good stuff. And you can see as an example what makes the bootleg kind of fun. Now, I'm not necessarily saying the bootleg is like the canonical version. In fact, I'm pretty actively saying that's not the canonical version, but there is something to be said for some of the shenanigans. So like I said, I'll try to dig up one of those images and put it in the show notes.
I think the author's name is Justin. And by the way, this is a fun thing from the website. It is the word cloud of word frequencies, and I'm pretty happy with this one.
That is because there is Mac Pro, extremely large, phone almost as large, and then a bunch of other stuff.
It's basically Mac Pro phone. I can't wait for the Mac Pro phone. It's going to be awesome.
It will be pretty work money try.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, this is Justin K, who has done incredible work here. And like I said, I will try to find one of these like images where you can see what the bootleg gets you, and I will post that in the show notes. But happy 700, everyone. And I'm not going to go on for 2 hours like I normally do, but I will just say very briefly, thank you to anyone who listens, whether or not you're a member. Thank you for sticking with us for, what did you say, John, 13 years or whatever it's been. It's really a genuine privilege that we get to do this together, that the three of us get to do this together, that you give us your time, which is your most valuable resource. So thank you, everyone, for sticking with us. We really appreciate you. Public betas are out, and I'm curious, what do we have betas installed on? And I ask this because I have the betas on my Vision Pro, and I have the beta on my iPad. And now that the public betas are out, and now that all the travel that I know I'm doing for the summer is done, I think I might do public beta on my phone soon. So let me start with Marco. I believe you said you have already gone all in on betas on your phone. Is that right?
Yeah, I've been on the main phone beta situation since beta 2. It has been mostly fine. Beta 2 was a little shaky with messages, like the messages app sometimes like losing a whole thread and having to be rebooted or whatever. That seems to have been fixed after beta 2. And the only major issues I have with it now are some like behavioral differences that are making my app behave weirdly and other apps occasionally behave weirdly. They did a lot of under the hood changes with iOS 27, and some of them are showing. So there's going to be a little bit of a bumpy period as apps get updated for that. And then finally, the biggest problem I have is CarPlay has gotten a lot of updates, and it's a little rough. In particular, if your car has a hardware play pause button of some kind, like you click the volume knob in and it turns it off or on, or there's an actual play pause somewhere in your car, and that if that maps to CarPlay's playing and pausing. The previous treatment of that was that iOS would forward that to the audio app as a remote play pause command, the same way as if you tapped, if you clicked the stem on an AirPod, same thing. For some reason in CarPlay on iOS 27, they're instead treating those as audio interruptions, which is the same kind of event as like if you're playing a podcast and you get a phone call, or Siri comes on to speak a direction to you or something. That's an audio interruption, and then so it pauses your audio kind of forcefully, and then it unpauses it whenever the interruption ends. Well, in CarPlay on iOS 27, it has moved those from play pause events to audio interruptions, and when they end, my AV audio engine totally errors out, fails, and crashes.
That's fun.
So that's a big problem. I haven't had time to file a feedback. Actually, you know what? I should have sponsored this episode, Claude. I wonder can I have AI write better feedbacks so that I don't have to? Because I'm sure Apple is not putting in any more effort than that to go through our feedback reports. So finally, maybe AI can be the great equalizer to finally equalize the amount of effort it takes to file a feedback versus the amount of effort Apple will spend looking at it.
Incredible. John, what's your beta story?
I've been resisting on the phone. I've thought about it a few times, but every time I look at my phone, I'm like, I don't want this to not work in any minor way. And also, this is my phone year, so I know I'm going to get both new hardware and new software, assuming it doesn't cost $1 million when it comes out. So I probably will update this before my actual new phone arrives, but I've been resisting on the phone. I haven't even done my iPad. Normally I do my iPad by this point, but I don't know. Whenever I'm watching TV on my iPad, I'm like, I don't want this to be messed up. I know these betas are really stable and everything, which is why I'm even considering it, but yeah, so none of my iPads or iPhones have been updated. I've got my development Mac that is running the latest Golden Gate beta, and I keep that updated, and I keep that with the latest version of Xcode and all that stuff, and I'm fixing bugs over there and doing all that. But that's it. What might happen, what will happen is that I'll end up updating my wife's Mac to Golden Gate and my children's Macs to Golden Gate because they all skip Tahoe. Obviously, I won't be updating my Mac to Golden Gate. So that's my beta situation. I'll be running macOS 15 until this rate December or something or whatever. The new Macs come out and I can actually get one of them, which is fine by me. But I'm not jumping on the beta train early.
Oh, one more thing about these betas. So Siri, there's a couple of things to be aware of with Siri on iOS 27. Obviously, it's the whole new Siri AI thing. In daily use, what that means is when you pull down on your home screen to type in an app name into Spotlight, it is slower because that pulls down all of Siri. And Siri is like, let me do the world for you. And I'm just trying to launch 1Password. It's like, let me do everything for it. So there are some common operations that now that Siri is everywhere, they're actually much slower now. So one of them is typing app names into Spotlight, what used to be Spotlight, to launch them. The other one, which is kind of annoying to me in particular, is creating reminders with the new Siri is actually significantly slower, which is not great news for somebody trying to launch a new app that uses reminders. And this is also just annoying because this is by far the way that I create the vast majority of my reminders. Creating a reminder now, you still say, hey, remind me, later today to do this. It now thinks a lot more about that because it's invoking the AI LLM layers, and it asks more follow-up questions where I think it shouldn't. So if it seems like it hears me worse now, like Siri has upgraded to worse ears, and And so it'll ask for clarification, like, did you say this or this? And like, it never asked me that. It would just dictate it pretty accurately almost every time before. And usually one of the things that it thinks I said is just way off. So they're still ironing some stuff out, but I think it is probably pretty safe to conclude at this point that the move to new Siri just is going to make a lot of common things slower, because it is now applying a much higher level of complex intelligence to even simple things like searching for apps and creating reminders. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but that will probably be at least partially made up for by the fact that new Siri is actually really good so far. Earlier today, I was driving and I was cutting it close with making the ferry, and I was on the highway, a couple miles from the ferry terminal, and I'm like, I wonder if this works. I asked Siri, what time is the nearest ferry from here to here, the places I'm going. And I didn't tell it what ferry company. I don't have an app for the ferry. It's one of those things where like you just go to their website and there's basically like a JPEG or something, like making a table and just like a schedule table. And I don't know how Siri found this information, but it did find it, and it told me what time the next ferry was. And I said, how about the one after that? And it successfully told me the one after that. I checked, and it was right.
That's incredible.
It has never been able to do that before. So I do think, it is like any other modern AI tool in the sense that this is a significant step up from what we had before. I think one of the biggest challenges that we're all going to have is just remembering to try something or thinking to try something instead of just assuming that something won't work and never even trying it. That is by far what holds me back the most with AI, and that is by far what will hold me back using new Siri over time. That like we're all so accustomed to Siri sucking for over a decade that we're not even going to think to try it, but try it, because you might be surprised what it can do as long as you're patient, because it's slow.
I feel like it's probably worth briefly following up on my weird, I'm not getting taps from Aaron on my watch. If you recall, it was working when Aaron sent messages in other conversations, like in group chats, and I was just constantly missing notifications from her. And let me tell you, of all the people I want to miss notifications from, both selfishly and unselfishly, she was the last on the list. And somebody at some point had suggested, hey, do you somehow have her conversation muted? And that wasn't it. But what it was that in the settings in her contact, the text tone somehow got set to none. Maybe I did that, maybe I didn't. And it's worth following up that I believe that was the fix. That for me, moving her text tone from none to anything else seems to have done it. And it's not, I don't think it's 100%, but I think it's good enough that the remaining percentage, whatever that may be, is me genuinely not feeling my wrist get tapped. So I am calling this one officially solved as far as I'm concerned.
All right. Congratulations. I hope you're right.
Have you fixed yours?
I have just worked around it successfully because I had the text tone set for Tiff. I can turn it off, but the reason I set it in the first place was because I was missing her messages, so that was not causing the problem. My workaround remains that I just keep messages notifications as persistent notifications instead of, I guess, like momentary or whatever the other kind is called. So they stay on my screen on my Mac until I dismiss them. And that so far seems to have fixed the problem, because I am not missing them anymore on my Mac. And it's specifically on the Mac that I would usually miss them. So we'll see. I haven't done the same thing. Well, I think the phone already basically does that. But yeah, we'll see.
And there were a bunch of other stuff that people were suggesting. You mentioned one of them already, that you can mute notifications for individual conversations. So that would have also fit, if this had been the case, which it wasn't, it would have also fit your symptoms, which is like, hey, in the group conversation, I get a notification, but in my private one, I don't. If you had somehow muted the private one, but not the other one. Were there other things that people suggested that didn't apply to you, but were good ideas to check?
Muting the conversation was definitely a good one. I'm trying to think if there was anything else. I mean, there were a lot of offers. There's nothing I can think of that seemed even remotely reasonable, to be honest, but conversations can be muted, which I do use from time to time, particularly on group chats, and her conversation was not. The text tone was the only thing that I saw that really seemed to make a difference. And I'm really struggling to remember anything else that I thought was plausible.
All right. Well, I just want to. There's a bunch. We said this. We were saying this again because I know we talked about it last week too. Just because so many other people said I have this problem too. But apparently, it is a common problem.
Yeah. John, you have a gift from Cloudflare. Can you tell me about this, please?
I'm very excited about this. When I talked about making my move from my old shared hosting provider to Cloudflare and my process there, I talked about how the different ways they have for you to host websites at Cloudflare. One of them is kind of like the old style, like either Dropbox or S3 bucket, where you just chuck a bunch of files into essentially an S3 bucket, and you can put a host name that you own in front of it, and voila, instant website. But I'm way more picky about my URLs than that would allow. So I needed to have, in my old static site, it was just running Apache, and I was just using like HD access to rewrite rules and crap. I needed something like that. So the other system they have at Cloudflare, they have an old system called Pages, which is deprecated and I didn't use. They have a worker system, which is just basically when someone hits this URL, we will run a little bit of code that you provide us. And I provided this little, and they have an API for Node.js where you can provide what they call a worker that runs code written in Node against their API, that it gets an HTTP request and it sends a response. So as I was describing, I wrote my own little dinky, like if you get a request, respond in this way. It's like the world's simplest web server, right? And it does all my URLs and my redirects and all the stuff that I need to do for my various websites. But it annoyed me that Cloudflare has this amazing caching system that you can put in front of another website. Like if you have a website hosted somewhere else, you can put Cloudflare in front of it to handle DDoS and caching and stuff. But you can't just take that cache and throw it in front of one of your workers. So then inside my worker code, I had to be like, oh, there's an API for the cache. So when you get the request, first check the cache if the thing is there and honor the various headers and blah, blah, blah. It's like, why am I doing this? You have a product that already does caching. Can't I just have a worker and then take the cache and put it in front of the worker? And they were like, no, caching is only for putting in front of websites that aren't hosted at Cloudflare. It's for other websites that are hosted at other places. So that annoyed me. Well, here we are. I don't know how long it is, maybe a year later or less than a year later. And they have, in fact, changed their system to allow you to put their cache in front of workers. And it was glorious. So first of all, it just ripped out all the caching code. And there was a lot of it, and it was annoying. And I actually had a bunch of bugs in it that I had to fix. Ripped it all out. Nope, no caching. Destroyed. Just I love deleting lines of code, right? And then it's like one configuration setting in your worker. It's like, do you want cache to be in front of this? And I said, yes. And everything else was all ready to go because all of my content already had cache headers in it and everything, right? It's all I needed to do. And then I looked at my dashboard for my workers, and I think it was like an 80 to 90% drop in CPU time for my workers because most everything is cache. Like the thing is when, the worker would get activated, even when it was returning a cache thing, it would run your worker and your worker would run the cache code that would check the cache and find the cache and set that's still CPU time. Your worker is still running. Now my worker doesn't even run like 80 to 90% of the time because the request hits the cache. That's what caching is supposed to do. It was glorious. I tried to take good screenshots of it, but I think I lost all those things in a big desktop cleanup I did. But yeah, all my charts were like, not that I was paying like whatever the minimum is for workers is like $5 a month or something piddling like that. But now I'm using like no CPU. It's great. So anyway, I want to thank Cloudflare for implementing that obvious feature. It has made my life and the life of my workers a lot better.
Yeah, the blog post is very long where they discuss this, but it's very, very interesting. And one of the things they walk through is how they landed here, which is basically like, when we originally devised the whole caching infrastructure and whatnot, it was to serve this need over here at A, but to put a cache in front of workers, that's basically starting from Z. And so now we need to reconcile these two things. It was very, very good and very interesting and really a great example of documentation, Apple. So it's worth checking out if you have even a passing interest in this.
Like I said, setting it up was like literally like in my worker config, you just do cache : enabled or true or whatever. Like that's it. That's the whole thing because the caching system already has a big web UI and everything. And again, if you have a decent little web server thing, you're already sending the expiration headers. It was like no work. It was just deleting code. Loved it.
We are sponsored this episode by Squarespace, the all-in-one website platform designed to help you stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting out or scaling your business, Squarespace gives you everything you need to claim your domain, showcase your offerings on a professional website, grow your brand, and get paid all in one place. I love Squarespace. I've been using Squarespace myself for probably something like 10 or 15 years now. It's been a long time. And I've also recommended it to lots of other people who come to me saying, hey, you're a nerd. I need to make a website. Can you help me make a website? And I say, yes, but I don't need to actually do it. I can just tell you, go to squarespace.com/ATP and figure it out. And they do, because it's super easy to use Squarespace. So whether you're a coder or whether you're, somebody's asking you as a coder to make them a website, you can empower them or empower yourself to just do it and not have to go through nerds like us. So, Squarespace supports all sorts of business features these days. You can host storefronts for digital goods, physical goods, time slots, newsletters, private podcasts, member areas. There's so much you can do on Squarespace. Whatever your business is, chances are they support it. And it's backed by all the features you might want. Newsletters, analytics, SEO tools, all sorts, email campaigns, like all sorts of stuff that your business needs these days. Squarespace has all of it built right in. There's no coding, no updates. It's all just visual, and it's all just built-in, awesome, modern tools. It's a wonderful platform. What I recommend is that when you need to make a website, or when somebody asks you to make them a website, have them or you go to squarespace.com/ATP, start a free trial. You can build the whole site before you pay. You can see, how does Squarespace work for you? How easy is it? How easy is it to make your logo and import your stuff and all this? You can do all that so easily. Try it. When you're ready to sign up, squarespace.com/ATP, code ATP for 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring our show.
Apple continues to change how icon files are rendered. This is largely coming off our conversation with or about the incredible work that Parakeet did from last episode or the episode before. John, tell me, what are they doing?
I mean, this is the double-edged sword of the system, where the .icon files are a bunch of layers and ingredients in a recipe, and the recipes say stuff like specular highlight, amount 5, angle 22. And that doesn't really say, okay, but what should the specular highlight look like? And so that leaves Apple free to change how it renders the same recipe. Like, what does amount 5 mean? What does specular highlight mean, or whatever? And they have been changing it. We mentioned last time that they have changed it between 26 and 27. But even within 27, as each beta of Golden Gate comes out, and presumably also the iOS ones, although I haven't been looking at those, they change how the icon's rendered. The same icon renders differently in beta 2 and beta 3. And as Louis was pointing out when he was complaining about this, it makes it difficult to be an icon designer, because you think, like, I've done this icon for a client and it's all done and it looks like this. And the next beta comes out and it's like, well, now all your icons look different and you didn't change a thing. Now, I know the 27s are still in beta, so if you're making an icon against a beta OS, it's always going to be a moving target, but it does make me a little bit concerned. I think I mentioned in the last show that I was hoping that 27 was just a big correction in icon rendering from 26, and that 28 wouldn't continue the trend of essentially changing how icons are rendered over and over again, because that makes it very difficult to sort of have any kind of stable identity. I give them some leeway to tweak stuff, mostly because I hated how 26 rendered stuff, but here's hoping this doesn't continue indefinitely, because, or at the very least, like, if you want to change it, just add new effects, but don't change how the existing effects render, because it's just going to change how everyone's icons look. So anyway, still a little bit concerned about that.
All right, with regard to our member special about Mac Asked Mac Apps, on July 9th, a friend of the show, Steve Troughton-Smith, said, LOL at OpenAI replacing the native AppKit ChatGPT app with the Electron Codex app after Gruber's recent posts praising it as a good Mac app. Whoopsie dipsies. Gus Mueller, another friend of the show, said, and it went from 158 megs to 1.5 gigabytes. Great. Stupendous. And then, of course, our good friend Gruber wrote, today is the day OpenAI effed up the ChatGPT Mac app.
Yeah, I'm glad he got in. He has all these podcasts where he was praising it. What a great native Mac app it is, how much I love it. And it's not, it's a Mac app, all these other apps aren't. He got in all that, all those podcasts, all those posts, and all that praise just before they screwed it up. Incredible work, everyone.
With regard to the Globe key on Apple's extended keyboards, if you recall, I think it was Marco and I particularly, or maybe it was John, one of you and me, was lamenting that the Globe key had moved between the original Touch ID Lightning keyboard and my new hotness USB-C Touch ID keyboard. And the Globe key used to be in the bottom left, used to be in the area above the inverted T arrows, but now it is up and it is all the way down in the bottom left-hand corner and screwing me up all the time. Well, Philip Hofstetter wrote, the Globe key was moved next to Control with the USB-C revisions when the OSs started to use the Globe key as a modifier key. In the Touch ID versions, the key was still at the old place, just renamed from FN. or the F and key.
F and key. There you go.
There we go. All right. So Philip writes and continues, here's a launch agent. You can put in tilde library launch agents, we'll put that in the show notes, to map the globe key next to control back to control and the new menu key to globe, restoring the old functionality, which is very clever. And I'm trying to convince myself not to do this because I try very hard to stick with like the vanilla version of macOS. Like I try not to tweak the ever-living snot out of it, but it is quite possible I will fail in this regard because this is very appealing. Then with regard to the good or Lightning versions, that model for reference is A2520 Magic Keyboard with Touch ID and numeric keypad, which does come in both white and black, although it only came in white when I bought it. And we will put a link in the show notes that John has provided me to that.
It comes in several colors, not just white and black. You're talking about the keycap color. Yes, it does come in with black and white keycaps, but it also comes in actual colors, as in, I guess, like dyed to match the iMacs or whatever.
Oh, the iMac keyboards, right.
You can find lots of varieties of these. But anyway, the version that I have, or that my wife has in front of her M1 Mac Studio, we'll put the model number in the show notes, but it's MMMR3LL/A. Again, this is the A2520 keyboard, but there's specific model numbers. That's the one that is silver, the silver aluminum with black keys. And I, based on last show where we were talking about the globe key, that I think I had seen the globe key over there, but not on the, I just assumed they hadn't messed with the extended one, but they did. And now I knew about it, or my memory was refreshed. So I immediately went on eBay and bought one of these. So now I have a new inbox, silver with black keys, Touch ID, extended keyboard with a full-size complete control key in the lower left corner. And I will use that with my new Mac if and when I get it.
But Lightning, absolutely
well,
not.
Here's the thing about Lightning. It's Lightning where it plugs into the keyboard. It's USB-C on the other end. So I don't care what the end looks like that plugs into the keyboard. It's a USB-C keyboard. It's just the end that plugs in is Lightning. I don't care about that at all. So yeah, and otherwise it has all the same features. It has Touch ID, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about the globe key. I don't care about the menu key. I was very happy to find this, especially finding a new inbox one. I didn't open it because it is sealed, but I do wonder if someone resealed it. So if I open it up and it's filled with a bunch of rocks, we'll find out when I get my Mac Studio, hopefully sometime later this year.
Oy vey. This is our continuing and depressing price increase corner where Brian Nering writes, you guys haven't mentioned the Studio display. If the Vision Pro gets a price increase, then shouldn't the display with RAM and storage in it get one too?
I think the margins are higher on the Studio display percentage-wise than they are on the Vision Pro. That's I honestly do, because the stuff in the Vision Pro costs a lot of money, but it's filled with super expensive stuff. The Studio display costs a ton of money, and it's filled with not quite that expensive stuff. So I think the Studio display could just absorb it. But hey, don't give them any ideas. Just because they haven't increased the price yet doesn't mean they're not going to. So shh.
Right. I have been reflecting on my decision not to purchase a Studio Display XDR or even 3 of them, and I stand by it, but I really want one. Anyway, we have a little bit of anonymous feedback with regard to the decision to skip M6 Pro, Max, and Ultra. This anonymous individual writes, roadmaps for chips are decided anywhere between 3 to 5 years in advance, so any rumors suggesting roadmap changes a year before release is just not true. They were decided way before the rumor mill knew about it. Some last-minute changes and delays do happen, but the Apple Silicon team still has the most aggressive and reliable execution timeline when compared to the rest of the industry. And the decision to skip all of those processor chips was based on multiple factors, including the use of new packaging technology to build separate CPU and GPU chiplets, available resources, design complexity, etc.
Yeah, that's the problem with all these rumors is they will very often get the news whenever they get it and decide I guess they'll just decide either this just happened or it happened recently. But as we've discussed many times with these chip roadmaps, they're usually made very far in advance just because it takes so long to design chips. That's why I was asking last episode, do you think they designed these chips and had to discard them, or did they were never going to make these and we were just finding out about it now? So this anonymous person says, no, this was decided a long time ago. There are no M6 Pro Max Ultra chips that they had to throw away.
Finally, also with regard to Ultra chips, Mark Gurman wrote, when was this? This was a few days ago as we record. Apple plans to soon deploy a more powerful server based on the M5 Ultra under the internal codename J246. But engineers are already developing another new server chip for launch by 2029 that's built around the M7 Ultra's capabilities. The new Ultra is designed to support as much as 1.5 terabytes of memory, roughly double the capacity plan for the M5 Ultra, though whether Apple ultimately offers that configuration will depend on the state of the industry. That, I think a chip with 1.5 terabytes of memory on it might cost as much as a small country at this point.
Well, for server stuff, these things, the NVIDIA chips already cost like 50 grand or whatever, even more. So it kind of makes sense in that context. But this is relevant to the earlier discussions we had about Apple using NVIDIA GPUs in Google data centers. And it's like, do you think they'll still keep trying to develop their own servers using M chips? Gurman says yes. Gurman says they are not abandoning this effort. In fact, they have new models with newer chips that are coming out and a roadmap that includes not just the M5 Ultra-based servers, but also eventually the M7 Ultra-based servers in 2028 with tons and tons of RAM. So, I mean, assuming these plans haven't changed, it seems like Apple is still dedicated to the idea that they are going to run their own servers with their own chips running their own models and not entirely rely on Google's data centers and NVIDIA GPUs. There's another story that just came out today that I didn't quite get in here. It was maybe it'll be in a future show if there's more details other than what I'm about to say, which is that Apple is supposedly looking at AI chip companies for acquisition targets. I don't know if it named any individual company, but the fact that they're looking out there, hey, is there some kind of chip team? I think the article described it as like, is there the AI chip equivalent of PA Semi, like some team that has some really good people and really good ideas and some innovative technology specifically for AI chips in data centers? The fact that they're looking, again, if that rumor and this rumor to be believed, seems like all systems go on Apple Silicon powered servers. And it seems like Apple is expressing in these rumors, again, if they are true, they do not want to be beholden to NVIDIA or Google to run any of their models. I mean, and I think looking at that, again, the various reports of that tech talk they gave at WWDC, I think the only things that are running the Google data centers are like the really big beefy models. I think the dinky ones are still running on those M2 Ultra servers, the Apple Silicon ones. So yeah, I'm kind of surprised by this. I figured they had just given up on this, and this was like a vestige of the old regime of the pre JG departure regime. And it was like the Apple Silicon servers and the M2 Ultra and everything, those were all under the JG era. And I thought, well, he's out and maybe that's out as well, but it seems no. So keep an eye on this for the future.
I do think, though, that like this one bit from Gurman, I don't think it necessarily says as much as it kind of seems like it says, because what this actually sounds like is Apple is developing an M5 Ultra and also a couple years later an M7 Ultra. Okay, well, that is good news in the sense that they put those in a product. It's called the Mac Studio, and it's their highest end desktop, and they're pushing it as like a great solution for local AI inference. Awesome. Okay, so it's good that they're developing Ultra chips, because that way they can keep that product going, and they can have high memory ceilings and high I/O ceilings that those really big chips allow. That's great. Now, whether that will go into servers that they will use, I think that's actually a separate question, and whether the servers will be running a different chip or a different variety of the chip compared to what ships in the Mac Studio, that's also a different question. And it doesn't sound like Gurman has a lot of information on that part of the question.
He's got a code name for it.
Yeah, but that could just be the M5 Ultra.
No, it says Apple plans to soon deploy a more powerful server based on the M5 Ultra under the internal code name J246. That's the server code name. It doesn't mean they're going to ship it or that this rumor is right, but that's the info in this. That they, not just that the M5 Ultra exists and they're going to stick it in Mac Studio, but they're also planning on sticking it in a server, and here's the code name of the server. Maybe it'll never happen. Again, it's rumors. We'll see how it goes. And Apple tends not to be particularly forthcoming with this, setting aside the Wall Street Journal video that we saw where they're like, hey, here's all our servers. I'm not sure when we'll see that again. If and when this does happen, I'm not sure Apple will even announce it, but this rumor is the first positive sign I've seen in the post-JG era that anyone has said, oh yeah, Apple's still doing that whole Apple Silicon server thing, which is surprising to me, but we'll see. Oh, and as for the 1.5 terabytes of memory, everyone's making a big deal about like M7 in 2028, they'll finally reach parity with the 2019 Mac Pro in terms of RAM. Again, assuming you can even get 1.5 terabytes of RAM. That is interesting, but it is also the case that giant gobs of memory in servers has been a thing for ages. And in the realm of servers, 1.5 terabytes of memory is not that unusual and hasn't been for decades. And AI loves tons of memory. So good on Apple for apparently setting up a roadmap where, at least if you have infinite money, you can have enough RAM to run some big models.
Yeah. And do you think it would actually cost more when they release this in 2029 than it cost for the 2019 Mac Pro? So the 2019 Mac Pro, if you configure it to 1.5 terabytes of RAM, was something like $25,000.
Oh, it's got to be more. Right?
It has to be more.
By 2028, first of all, this RAM is going to be so much faster than that 2019 Mac Pro. It's not the same RAM. It's way faster RAM. And second, the RAM crisis will probably not be over by 2028.
Right, exactly. What this rumor said is 2029 which new Ultra does he say supports 1.5 terabytes? The M5 or the M7?
Trying to say the M7 one does. His writing is so unclear, but if you parse it out, it's roughly double the capacity of the planned M5, so that means it's the M7. If you just wrote clearly, this would be a lot easier to parse. But.
So if he's right, then the 2029 release of the M7 Ultra and presumably a Mac Studio around that would have 1.5 terabytes. So in 2029, will 1.5 terabytes of RAM cost more than inflation adjusted $25,000 from 2019? I'm saying at least like it's probably going to be triple that much. Like that really could be like, a $75,000 option.
Yeah. And as for your question about whether these will be different than the ones they ship in the Mac Studio, I say no. It's hard enough for them to make a single one of these chips. I don't think there's going to be a special server variant. They've never made one before, a special server variant. That isn't rumored here, and I just don't think it's going to be the case. The only thing I could possibly imagine is that maybe the Mac Studio won't support 1.5 terabytes of RAM, and that would be a server-only thing, but the chip will be the same.
I mean, honestly, it would be really weird if they would limit the Mac Studio that way. Like, I think they're going to design the chip to have certain resource limits, and that's going to be a chip design limit, not a logic board limit, I'm sure. And it's going to be dependent on components that are available at that time, and what can they get, whatever the memory chips of that of those sizes are. Can they get them in volume? Can they get them for less than $75,000? Like there is going to be a lot of uncertainty around that, but the chip will be designed and probably already is being designed with a certain target in mind. I hope that whatever the Mac Studio or whatever the theoretical servers can do with the M7 Ultra alleged chip here, I really hope and I expect that the Mac Studio will probably have the same resource limits. And this bodes very well for the future of the Mac Studio. I am a little curious if they can do all that without redesigning the Mac Studio case.
Well, the rumor is that they weren't going to redesign the case, but they were going to totally redesign the cooling on the inside. And so I'm not sure how that will work. I mean, they're already using, I think, copper in the Ultra one. So maybe they go to that special metal that is even better than copper. But there was a rumor that, oh no, there's no Mac Studio redesign in the next 3 years or whatever, but they are going to change like all the internals for heating and cooling. So we'll see.
Well, the next 3 years just means the M5 Ultra generation. That could be true, and then they could 3 years from now, when the M7 Ultra generation comes out, they could have a redesign then.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll be able to tell when the M5 Ultra one comes out, when someone cracks it open, does it have the same cooling or not? Which generation that rumor is supposedly about. The other thing about 1.5 terabytes of RAM is that when you get up to that amount, it does start to physically take up more room because it's just more chips, right? So, and like, obviously they generate heat, although it's not that much heat, so I don't think it's that big. But like, I guess you'd have to squint at the Mac Studio logic board and say, if you had to put 1.5 terabytes of RAM, could you squeeze it in there? I mean, they probably can. We'll see.
Now, all right, bear with me. If they redesign the case in 3 years to be a little bit bigger and to be able to have 1.5 terabytes of RAM and a really fast chip, why don't they just call it the Mac Pro at that point? They've just recreated the Mac Pro.
Well, I mean, the thing about the Mac Pro is it would need to dissipate significantly more heat, as we went through that last time. I think they're like 3x. The Mac Pro is dissipating 3x the heat, and I think there's a limit to how much you can redesign to move 3x more heat. I mean, yeah, you don't have to make it as big as the current, like the 2019 Mac Pro, but you'd have to make it significantly bigger. And at that point, you got to start rethinking it, because you can't just take that and like extrude it outwards or something. Like,
you know what they could do? So what if they shot the heat straight up? Now, bear with me. Fan is a circle. So what if the whole thing was basically a tube of fan, and there was a big heat sink in the middle of it, and maybe the whole thing could just be a circle?
That would be brilliant.
Yeah, they did that without a fan in the G4 Cube. I know you're referring to the trash can, but the G4 Cube is their first chimney computer, and they're like, well, if we've got this vertical thing, because it's great, because heat rises, we don't even need a fan. Turns out they should have had a fan.
Yes. Turns out having any fan moves a heck of a lot more heat than having no fan.
Than convection, yeah.
Yeah. Like, even the slowest, most slight fan has a pretty big difference in how much heat that moves. But yes, like, honestly, if they actually went to something that looked a little bit more like the trash can, who knows? I mean, I'm sure they wouldn't actually recreate that shape.
They have thermal corner PTSD from that design. I feel like.
I know, but actually, with what we are seeing now, who knows how the internals would be laid out? But like the Mac Studio, okay, if you wanted to dissipate a lot more heat from that, well, what if you made it taller? Like you can start to see how they would get there.
Well, the Mac Studio has such a convoluted airflow. Like I think it's in the bottom and out the back.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
Right? Yeah, from bottom to top makes sense like the trash can. From front to back makes sense like the 2019 Mac Pro and the earlier Mac Pros. But from bottom vents out the bottom of the back is not. It's like, why are you making your life more difficult? So I really do hope they revisit that at some point.
We are sponsored this episode by Claude. Claude is the AI for minds that don't stop at good enough. It's the collaborator that actually understands your entire workflow and thinks with you. Whether you're debugging code at midnight or strategizing your next business move, Claude extends your thinking to tackle the problems that matter. And Claude Code. Oh, Claude Code is so good. If you're a developer spending half your day on tasks you wish you could just hand off, believe me, I know the feeling, Claude Code runs in your terminal, reads your code base, and can take on tasks like writing tests, refactoring, or debugging without you hand-holding it through every step. Personally, I just issued an Overcast update where I took the most tricky bugs that people have reported for months or years, and that I could not figure out why they were happening. And each one I gave to Claude. And I said, user report this. These are components you might want to look at within the app. Try to figure out why. And it fixed each one. It found them and it fixed them. And now that fix is in the App Store. And I didn't have to find those bugs. I mean, honestly, I never would have. I've been looking for like a year on some of them and I still wasn't able to find them. It found them. I was blown away by how good it was. And I can tell things like, earlier today, I was writing a class for an experimental project I'm doing, and I had Claude write a bunch of the API for me. And then I looked at how it wrote it, and there was some part of it that I wanted to change. So I just rewrote the first function. It totally broke the build. It wouldn't compile. And I went to Claude and I said, I want you to do it this way. I broke it. Finish the job. So I would never tell a human to do that. It did it. It didn't make fun of me to its friends. It didn't quit. It didn't complain. It just did it. It was amazing. Claude is really worth checking out. For problems worth solving, get started with Claude at claude.ai/ATP. That's claude.ai/ATP. And check out Claude Pro, which includes access to all the features that I mentioned in this read. claude.ai/ATP. Thank you so much to Claude for fixing my code and for sponsoring our show.
Let's do a little bit of follow out, if we can, please. In episode 627 of Upgrade, which as we record this is not this week, but last week, there was a discussion about FileMaker. And I was aware of FileMaker as a thing. And I was aware that it was or perhaps is part of Claris, which is itself part of Apple now. I remember ClarisWorks very fondly from when I was a kid and using Macs briefly in school. But I was hoping that probably John could explain to me, what the heck is FileMaker? Like, I don't feel like anyone has actually sat down and explained what the heck it is.
Well, you wrote in the notes here, what was FileMaker? And I put a link into it. It exists now. It is not a past tense thing. But yes, it did exist in the past as well. I have used FileMaker back in the classic macOS days. The best way I would describe it is, I think it was described as like a database app. And when you think about database, you're thinking about like, Oracle database or MySQL or SQLite or something like that. Not that kind of database. Not a SQL database with tables and rows and columns and all that stuff. But instead a program that would provide a database backend, and you could write front ends that would write to your database. So it's the same type of stuff. You would define a schema, and here's where your data is, and you would get things into it and out of it, and you'd make like a GUI front end for it. And it was used by like businesses to sort of, this is days before the web, right? So you had like an inventory system for your small business. You had to keep track of how much whatever stuff you have, or you wanted to like roll your own system for keeping track of people's hours or something. You can think of it kind of like HyperCard, because HyperCard also had a similar type of like you can make GUI apps, but without being a developer, but very database focused. Like I don't know, like maybe like a cross between HyperCard and Excel, with more of a data focus. So lots of businesses had FileMaker databases that they ran their businesses off of. I never used it in in anger, like in a real actual scenario. I was just playing with it as a kid. So I never worked at a business that used it or wrote it for a business. So I don't know how it actually performed and why people still might use it in the modern age. But in the days before the web and in the days when you couldn't do all of this from a spreadsheet, it was like a little bit more than that. And the days before, because a spreadsheet's not a good UI to have employees use and stuff or whatever, although plenty of businesses still do it these days. But yeah, that's my impression of what FileMaker was like for people who actually used it. And I guess it still exists because, hey, if your business runs on FileMaker and they keep making new versions of it, why would you ever change if it's still working for you? Like there's all these stories about, someone wandering around in 2010 and they see a Mac SE in the back of some business running some FileMaker database that their whole business runs on. And how is that computer even still running? It's well, we need it because it runs FileMaker. So I'm glad it still exists for the people who like it. But these days you'd be like, why don't you make a web app? Why don't you, there's a million other things that you could do other than a FileMaker database, but it's still out there for people who want it.
I was glancing at the marketing website, which is Apple, it's very Apple-y, except not, which is very unusual. This is claris.com/FileMaker, which is very interesting. And I don't have it in exact, I'm looking at it, but I can't find exactly what it was I was seeing, but they had some discussions about how you can do agentic coding with FileMaker, which is so mind-bending to me because I perceive FileMaker, seemingly unfairly, as something from the early to mid 80s. And they're talking about stuff that's relevant in the last 80 days, Yeah. And it's just astonishing to me that this is still a thing.
I see the thing that says FileMaker Cloud. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What is FileMaker Cloud? They've met. I don't know if you remember, there was some diversion. I don't remember the details, but the company was like, hey, FileMaker is old and creaky. We're coming out with a new thing called Bento. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It was a consumer focused, friendlier revision of FileMaker. And I think that just didn't take off. And they're like, oh, never mind. Our customers just want FileMaker. I have no idea what FileMaker is today. And the website really obscures what it might be, but it kind of reminds me with the agentic stuff. It kind of reminds me of we haven't talked about this in the show, but a lot of other people have been talking about it. The feature in the 27 OSs where you can describe a shortcut. You open the Shortcuts app and you just click a thing and you say, I want a shortcut that does X, Y, and Z, and it just makes it for you. I imagine that it's possible to do something similar with FileMaker because it is like Shortcuts, kind of like a higher level abstraction for data with a certain number of operations that you can do that the FileMaker knows about. Again, it's not a SQL database. It's not anything as low level as that. It's its own thing. So for all I know, there is a SQL interface to FileMaker these days. It wouldn't surprise me. And a web interface and a cloud thing. I don't know what they're doing, but the point is they're still in business somehow.
Claris.com/FileMaker/agentic-development. We'll put it in the show notes. AI is reshaping software. FileMaker is meeting the moment. Claris is investing so you can build with the leading AI coding tools and deploy straight into FileMaker, securely, permissioned, and ready to run. This is modern. This is now. It's incredible to me that this is a thing. So yeah, I appreciate the short trip down memory lane. I would love it. I would love to see screenshots of this. I haven't gone spelunking through the internet trying to find them myself, but I'm curious what this looks like both on the development side and on the production side. Because presumably on the production side, for whatever these apps are that this makes, presumably they can look like almost anything. But I'd doubly love to see what it looks like on the development side. So reach out if you're a FileMaker person. All right, I have to ask our editor to insert taps here.
Uh-oh.
Because apparently Maestral is no more, or soon to be no more.
Yeah, this is too bad. This is the app that we kind of found around our circles of maybe, 3-4 years ago, that was a replacement Dropbox client for Mac and Linux. And I don't know if it worked on Windows, but it works on Mac and Linux. And the idea it was basically the Dropbox app keeps getting bloated and crappy and just has a million things in it, and it's Electron and it takes a ton of resources, and so the Dropbox app was really resource intensive and bloated.
And I wanted accessibility access, and I wanted you to know if you wanted to save your screenshots into Dropbox, and it was just I think there was some kind of notes feature in it at some point. It was just, they were just chucking. Was there a mail feature in there? I forget. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and they were playing tricks, they were trying to get you to enter your root password by faking an admin permission dialog. Dropbox at many times of its history has acted like malware on your Mac. Like it's really, it's rough. And Maestral is a client that it's open source and it uses the Dropbox API to basically provide what Dropbox used to be, like a basic sync client. So you'd have a folder at home U Dropbox, and it would sync the content of that folder to Dropbox, which is exactly what Dropbox used to do.
Oh, that's another factor we didn't mention, which is that when Dropbox was sort of forced to move to the file provider thing because Apple made that API for them, and the file provider API was worse than the old one. That is another reason people preferred Maestral. Like, I don't want the thing where my Dropbox files are like, well, is it actually there, or is it just like a little zero content thing that when I double click on it has to download from I just want the old thing where it was just local files and they just happen to be in sync with files somewhere in the cloud, and that's what Maestral would give you.
Exactly. And anyway, unfortunately, the creator of Maestral has moved on, not from life, fortunately, but from all these terms sound the same. When people leave jobs, it sounds like they're dying. Okay, the creator of Maestral no longer uses Dropbox, and so they've decided to stop working on it and just kind of abandon it. And it is open source, so I hope someone else picks it up. If not, eventually, like certificates will expire and stuff, and it will stop working. I've thought, like, should I pick it up? But I haven't used it in a couple of years either. I know. I also
you should not.
I kind of made that same decision. But like, should somebody pick it up? Like,
I mean, Dropbox should pick it up, honestly.
Yeah, for real.
No, you don't want them ruining it. No, that would be terrible.
Oh no, they should pick it up and say, why does everybody love this? Can we just make a native client that just does what this thing does? And the answer is yes, you could, and everyone would love it. They would, but I guess it wouldn't make them any more money. So oh well.
Yeah, that's not going to work. They're just going to mess it up. Like we don't want that.
Yeah, I think let's take this opportunity to do a quick ATP member special. ATP Diamond Dogs, should Marco take up the Maestral development? And I'm going to vote no.
No.
John, thoughts?
Everyone says no. I say no. Marco says no. Everyone knows that that's not a thing he should do.
No, I'm not going to do it.
Thank you for joining us on our July member special. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next month.
You know who should do it? John Gruber. Because he likes it.
Yeah, because he's so good at maintaining software projects.
But he can use it as like an AI vibe coding excuse, like that, and
that's
like
true.
That would be pretty great, actually. I should probably float this by him first, but yeah, everybody email John Gruber and tell him he should do this.
No, we want him to update his site for mobile first. We're working.
That's true.
The
That's
backlog on Gruber things that he has to do with technology is quite long. Get in line.
You're way at the back, my friend.
Anyway, I mean, look, it is open source, so it is possible for someone to pick it up. So I hope somebody does who has more time than we do. But
yeah, I think it's just a bunch of Python scripts, right? Kind of like the original Dropbox client.
Probably, yeah. And that would, and the only reason I stopped using it was because it was a little bit slower to see changes than the original than the actual Dropbox client, and I had issues with it in multi-user mode on the Mac. But it still runs on my server. Like it is I use Dropbox for the Market.org CMS for all the very high volume of blog posts that I still write. And so I needed a Dropbox client on the server. Dropbox themselves used to make a Linux client. I don't know if they still do, and it was horrendous. And so I replaced that with Maestral years ago, and it's been perfect since then.
At least they still support an API that Maestral is using. And also, like, I was reminded of this when I was messing with my Synology, that the Synology also has a Dropbox syncing thing somehow in there. I don't know if it's official Dropbox or they just wrote it themselves, but the bottom line is you can just enable a thing that will sync your Dropbox to your Synology.
Yeah, and the only thing is, though, but what you mentioned in a second ago is important. We don't know how long the API that powers this will continue to exist and be supported and be allowed. So I would caution anybody from building a business on this. But certainly, as long as that API continues to exist, this could be a really great open source project for someone to pick up.
I know about the Synology thing also because Dropbox recently made a change to their API backend that broke the Synology client, where the Synology client keeps losing its authentication every 2 hours or something. So that's a Synology has said they know what's happening and they're going to fix their client, but it is a little bit of a moving target.
That's weird because I do not have that problem with Cloud Sync, which is what I use to share files with you folks.
No. You're not using Cloud Sync with Dropbox, are you?
Yes, absolutely.
Check to see whether you've lost authentication.
How do I check that on the
go
Synology?
to Synology, go to the Cloud Sync app, and then look at your thing. And if it has a little red badge that says need to re-authenticate, then you've lost authentication.
All right, I'll take a look as we speak, but I don't think that's the case because I sent Marco the file that for the member special we recorded Monday, which is not available quite yet. Everyone, don't worry, but soon. I sent that file 2 days ago, and that was via Dropbox via Cloud Sync. So I think everything's working. I'm trying to log in now.
Loading mine right now to see if mine has. Not mine's still good. Maybe they already fixed it. Maybe Synology already fixed it. But yeah, there was a big community thread in the Synology thing of everyone having the same problem that I did. But I think it's still working because I didn't touch this since yesterday, and it's still authenticated for me. So maybe it has cured itself.
All right, no, I've got a green check mark. It says everything's up to date. So I think I'm good. I'm just a Cloud Sync unicorn. I say as I knock on wood because God bless, I cannot lose this. It would ruin me. We are sponsored this week by Quince. So it's summertime here in the Northern Hemisphere, and I really love that it's really warm, sometimes a little too warm if I'm honest, but that's okay. It's really, really warm. And then sometimes in the evenings, it gets actually ever so slightly nippy. And one of the great things about Quince, one of the many great things about Quince is that they can cover all of your bases, and they are especially good at summertime stuff. And so, for example, Quince offers 100% European linen pants and shirts that are breathable, easy to throw on, and the summer upgrade your rotation needs. And they start at just $34. I got to tell you, Quince has sent me a set of their linen pants. They are astonishingly comfortable. I absolutely love them. And I will be sad when I can't wear them anymore at the end of the summer because it's not really in style. And even I know that. Their t-shirts are soft enough to live in all day. And their lightweight cotton sweaters are exactly what you want when summer nights cool down, like I was talking about. Everything at Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They work directly with ethical factories and cut out the middle people, so you're paying for exceptional quality, not brand markup. And one of the great things about Quince is that it's not just for dudes. It's also for kids. It's also for women. So over the past year or so, Quince has been kind enough to let us spend a little bit of money with them. And over that time, all four of us in the List family have gotten something from Quince. And we just put an order through. Unfortunately, we haven't received it yet because I just did it, but we just put an order through for Aaron, a flow knit breeze and fit flare dress, and for Michaela, a trio of organic cotton cartwheel shorts. They are very excited to receive all these. And if it's anything like the clothing that Declan and I and Michaela actually have already gotten, it's going to be great. And it's not just clothing. Quince has become a trusted favorite for everything from home to travel and everyday essentials. They do a little bit of everything. So make your summer wardrobe easier. Go to quince.com/ATP for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Quince is now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/ATP for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/ATP. Thank you to Quince for sponsoring the show. Big topic for today is a couple of days ago as we record this, Apple decided to sue OpenAI. So we'll put many, many, many links in the show notes. There's a zillion different ones, but we're going to read a little bit, starting with our dear friend Jason Snell over at Six Colors. Back in May, OpenAI was rattling its saber about thinking about talking to lawyers about possibly considering a lawsuit against Apple for not treating it right when it came to ChatGPT integration. What a misdirection. Indeed, Apple has sued OpenAI, and it's alleging that the hardware program it's building with Johnny Ive and company is being fueled by the theft of trade secrets. Here's the statement Apple supplied to various news outlets on Friday. Quote, "At Apple, our teams are constantly developing breakthrough technologies to create the best products and services in the world. And protecting their work and intellectual property is something we take very seriously. Recently, significant evidence has emerged suggesting individuals employed by OpenAI wrongfully took Apple's secret and confidential information regarding our unreleased technologies, processes, and products. We will always defend our team's hard work and innovations, and we are taking all appropriate steps to do so."
Can I just pause at this moment?
Please.
These companies, to be at this size and scale, almost everyone at and near the top of a company like this is going to be a huge asshole in some form. It's just what is necessary to rise to those kinds of levels, right? And these companies pathologically, the personality of the company based on its behavior, its actual behavior. These companies are both just tremendous assholes in different ways. And so this statement, this starts out as Apple throwing such manipulative bullshit language. So our teams are developing technologies, protecting their work It's Apple's not doing it for Apple. They're protecting their team's work. We will always defend our team's hard work. This is such like support the troops kind of language. We are forced to do this because we have to defend our team's work. It's all about our teams. Now, keep in mind, Apple, which they're about to, we're going to get into this, later on in this discussion. What the work is that they're defending, Apple sees as 100% Apple's work, and they own that work. So they put on a great language slant here, as they tend to do. But let's be very, very clear about what Apple is defending here. Apple's defending what it believes is its property, not the property or work of the troops. It is Apple's, and Apple owns those troops, and Apple owns what it is trying to defend here.
Yeah, let me continue reading, but there's a lot here, and I have extremely mixed feelings about it all. But continuing on, there's a lot more in the court filing, as summarized by Chance Miller at 9to5Mac. The complaint alleges that former Apple designer Tang Tan used insider knowledge of Apple's confidential projects to grill job candidates in interviews. Additionally, Tan directed job candidates still working at Apple to bring actual Apple hardware components and samples for, quote, show and tell sessions. Furthermore, Apple says a candidate began, quote, screenshotting and downloading files related to a highly confidential Apple project hours before interviewing with Tan, who then solicited more information about the same Apple project once the interview started. This became an established pattern, Apple says.
So on this topic, I'm not a lawyer and I don't know about the legalities of this, but again, assuming what Apple says is true, I do wonder, and we'll get more into this as we go on, where the line is between what I think is a fairly clear line. Well, I don't even know, because again, I'm not a lawyer, of like whatever your legal responsibilities are as an Apple employee. Presumably you sign stuff when you become an employee, and by you violating your employment contract or whatever, like I'm sure there's civil legal things there to say, hey, you're an Apple employee, you're not supposed to, let's say, take hardware devices and bring them to a job interview with a competitor. I'm pretty sure the Apple employment agreement probably has language saying that you shouldn't do that. But that feels like it would be on the person going on the job interview. They have broken their employment agreement with Apple by doing a thing that is against that agreement. I don't know where the line is, because I'm not a lawyer, of like, say you're at the competitor company, say you're Tang Tan and OpenAI. Can you just tell people, oh, totally, go, like, bring all that stuff? Like, if you tell someone, hey, you should do a bunch of stuff that will probably break your employment agreement, are you liable for that? If I say, oh, you should totally go out and rob a bank, and you go out and rob a bank, am I liable in any way? You're the one who robbed the bank. I didn't do it. So I don't know where that line is. I don't know what the civil legal penalties are for, like, encouraging someone to break their employment agreement or whatever, which makes it hard for me to understand what the chances are of this thing. Even if you take everything Apple says at face value, it's like, okay, well, but where does the responsibility lie? Like, I read this, and we're going to read more of it, and it totally seems like a bunch of people who either are current or former Apple employees did things that were clear violations of their employment agreement, and they're going to get destroyed for it. Because, like, if it's true in any way whatsoever, it's so clear that you've done something bad as an Apple employee. I don't know where OpenAI's responsibility appears in this, because I'm not an employment lawyer and don't know anything about how that works. But people reading it, you're like, oh, OpenAI is a villain. And I'm like, well, are they just telling people to break the law, and then people are doing it, or break their contracts and they're doing it, and then they're blameless? But we'll see if this actually ever goes to court.
Yeah, and honestly, I hope it does, because that would be really popcorn kind of levels of interesting.
That's why they'll settle it, because they don't want that popcorn to happen.
Yeah, but yeah, it's certainly, like, again, none of us are lawyers of any sort, let alone a relevant sort, but you could probably make the case that, like, inducing somebody to do this, or possibly compensating someone, and you can say, like, well, is a job offer maybe a compensation for doing this? Like,
yeah, I can imagine scenarios where there is a liability there. I just don't know what the parameters are.
I'm sure what Apple is hoping for is a whole bunch of document discovery from, like, OpenAI emails and stuff. Like, I'm sure that's what they're probably hoping for.
Well, they seem to have tons already. You should continue, Casey, with more of the fun tidbits.
Yeah, so this gets really astonishing, and it's worth noting again that these are accusations. They have not been proven as far as we know.
This is Apple's side of the story.
It's only Apple's side of the story. But let me tell you, it sure sounds like Apple has some of these folks dead to rights. But anyways, two more allegations from Emma Roth at The Verge in her article listing the 6 wildest claims in Apple's lawsuit against OpenAI. Chang Liu, a former Apple employee who worked as a systems electrical engineer on the iPhone for over 8 years, allegedly kept an Apple-owned computer, allowing him to download dozens of confidential files. Liu also allegedly accessed Apple's cloud-based network storage weeks after he left the company using an authentication vulnerability that Apple didn't know about.
Again, I'm pretty sure Apple's employment agreement says you can't keep your Apple-issued computer after you leave the company, and you certainly can't use it to access our network after you're no longer employed. That's like basically, I'm sure there's like criminal,
that's actually
whatever laws they passed in the 90s to criminalize hackers. That's criminal liability of like you broke into a foreign network, like you unauthorized access to a blah blah blah. Like we have so many laws in the U.S. about that because back in the 90s when they made these laws, it was like to punish Mitnick or whatever his name was. Like if this is true, there's criminal liability and just really really poor thinking. Like the worst industrial espionage you can ever imagine. Don't use your Apple issued computer. Like, what do you think they're not trapping your Apple issued computer? Like, really, these are technology people. It's not like just, if this is true, it's just mind-bendingly poorly thought out.
Yeah, I mean, this is this, again, not lawyers, but Chang Liu sounds like he has some significant legal problems if any of this is true.
Again, possibly criminal.
Exactly, yeah, like that. I think odds are either he has to make a heck of a deal or he's going to literally be in jail for that. Like, that's going to be a big problem.
Yeah, although Apple would probably be very willing for him to, make a deal and turn on OpenAI.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure everyone's talking about stuff like that. Yeah, this is. You can argue about some of the other things, like what does Apple own in terms of the people, their expertise, things like that. But Apple does own their documents, their hardware prototypes. Like that's pretty clear cut. Exfiltrating those and bringing them to a competitor is generally a crime.
Continuing from The Verge, OpenAI allegedly coached Apple employees on how to bypass security measures. Woof. Apple claims Tan kept an internal document that outlines employee offboarding procedures. OpenAI allegedly used this information to warn employees coming from Apple about the company's security checks and coach them on how to avoid it.
They did a poor job of coaching, I feel like. Right? They said, hey, don't use your Apple laptop don't refuse to give back your Apple laptop and then use that same laptop, which Apple is tracking, to infiltrate their network and get stuff out. So I don't know, maybe they updated their coaching, but this gets to what Marco was saying. Like, okay, at the point you're coaching, presuming Apple is to be believed here, at the point where you're coaching applicants on how to avoid detection while performing industrial espionage, that feels like, again, not a lawyer, but that feels like a place where OpenAI suddenly has a bunch of liability.
Well, there's a version of this that's okay. Like, it's kind of like, when we tell our kids, like, don't talk to the police. Like, never ever talk to the police. If the police, come and try to stop you, if you're not under arrest, you can say, am I free to go? And you can go. Like, we tell people that's okay. So if OpenAI is saying, like, here's what's going to happen. Apple's going to, demand your laptop back. They're going to ask you for all these things. If any of those things are like legally not required and you can just say no thanks, like I don't want to do your security interview, I don't see anything wrong with them telling people that sort of thing. But there is a fine line between telling people what their rights are and telling people what's going to happen when they quit or get fired or whatever, versus saying, like, well, you can keep your laptop for 3 extra days and copy all the files off if you do this. Yeah. Like, there is a line, and there's a bunch of stuff on the okay side of that line. But it sounds like Apple thinks there's some stuff on the other side too.
Also from the complaint, as quoted by Gruber, OpenAI has used confidential Apple information in approaching Apple's trusted partners, even having one carry out a specific trade secret metal finishing technique for OpenAI, misleading the partner to believe they had Apple's permission to do so. Holy God, if this is true. My word.
Again, I don't know about the legalities here because, like, isn't that just fraud? But it's like there are so many situations where things seem like they should be against the law but aren't. For example, police can lie to you about this stuff all the time. Speaking of police, they can just lie and say, "Oh yeah, no, Apple gave you permission," and you just I know it's the same thing, but
they
like
can and do
right. So let's say OpenAI lies and says Apple totally gave me permission to do this. Is that on OpenAI? Yes, they're telling a lie, but isn't it kind of on the manufacturer to say, like, I'm sure the manufacturer has an agreement with Apple that says, here's our metal finishing technique, and our agreement says you can only use it for us and you can't tell anyone else about it and you can't use it for anyone else. And if someone says, oh, just ignore that agreement with Apple. Apple said we could do it. shouldn't the manufacturer say, well, we actually can't because the contract says we can't, and we can't take your word for it? That like, is there liability for OpenAI? There sure is liability for the manufacturer. I can guarantee that because Apple's not making contracts that don't have a clause in it that says you cannot use this metal finishing technique for anyone else. Like, that's surely in the contract. I feel like the manufacturer has violated the contract. Has OpenAI done anything? Again, I'm not familiar with the law. I'm sure there's something in there that says, as Marco said, there's some line that you cross when you induce a partner or you provide false information to a partner as part of your contract with them that says, no, Apple said it's fine. But the thing you're doing for them, they said, yeah, we love OpenAI so much, you can do it for them too. It's fine. You don't need to check. Don't call them.
Continuing from Gruber, footnote 13 on page 15 states, Apple and OpenAI have a commercial relationship involving the integration of OpenAI's ChatGPT into Apple Intelligence. The companies have entered into a written agreement governing that integration. That agreement is not at issue here. OpenAI's act of trade secret misappropriation alleged herein do not arise from and have no connection to that agreement.
Yeah, this is the big picture on this is why is Apple mad at OpenAI? The answer is obvious. Apple was not mad at OpenAI when they were making AI chatbots. Even though Apple was trying to do that, Apple was so incredibly bad at it that they needed OpenAI to bail them out to the extent that they could back in 2024 with ChatGPT integration in iOS when they couldn't get their own act together. And Apple just felt like, well, we don't have this and we're not competitive with this and we have this deal with OpenAI. But where Apple has always felt like this is our area, don't step on our toes, is hardware. So as soon as OpenAI said, hey, we're going to do hardware and we're hiring Johnny Ive and we're buying his company and we're doing this and we're doing that. And Johnny Ive is pulling all the Apple designers out of Apple into OpenAI. And Apple's looking at that and say, no. You don't make hardware. We make hardware devices. You can make that AI stuff that we don't understand. Maybe we'll figure it out, but hardware is us. And so they feel very competitive in that area. And this entire lawsuit seems entirely about metal finishing techniques and hardware designers and eggs and all like hardware devices. So thus far, OpenAI has not introduced a hardware device, and we've talked about it a lot. And we'll talk about it more probably next episode. But that is the place where Apple's like, no, that's too far. We hate you now. It's kind of like when Google started doing Android, and they were like, you just were supposed to provide us maps and search. What the hell? What is this? What is this smartphone? We do smartphone. You don't do that. You just do maps and search. So this is totally that moment where they're like, oh, so you're going to take all our designers and Johnny Ive, and you're going to make a hardware product that competes with us? We hate you now. What can we do about that? You're hiring away all of our employees. What is it? Something like 400 people, they said, had left Apple's hardware team to go to OpenAI.
Like, think about the soap opera going on about this. Like, okay, so first of all, yes, it is important to bring up Johnny Ive because Johnny Ive's company that he created, not Love From, his main company, but he created this sub company called IO or EO, however
they had to rename it because of a trademark thing. It's called like IO : podcast player. I forget what it is, but it's got like the App Store name,
right,
because of that lawsuit,
right. But so Johnny created this like sub company for his hardware efforts, sold it to OpenAI. This is obviously like a bunch of moving cups around to try to somehow legally and financially work out the fact that Johnny Ive is working for OpenAI, but not exclusively for OpenAI, but seems like mainly for OpenAI. And Johnny Ive he hired a whole bunch of people out of Apple, seemingly a lot of the people who used to work for him, like
his whole team, everybody, including all the people who succeeded him. Like Evans Hankey was in charge of, like his whole team is over there with him, including Tang Tan, I think.
Think about the relationship already that had to have gone on between Apple and Johnny Ive. Now, the last thing Apple wants to do is point this out or draw attention to it, which is why Johnny Ive is mentioned nowhere in this lawsuit, even though it obviously involves the division of OpenAI that is basically his team. Like, it would be really out there and far-fetched if it didn't involve any of him or his core people. So it probably does. But Apple does not want the PR to be that they are suing Johnny Ive in any context or any of Johnny Ive's properties, but they sort of are. Especially
since at this point, for as far as the public is concerned, they're like, there is no Johnny Ive OpenAI product. If they had done this after, like the OpenAI egg comes out and Johnny Ive is there on stage telling everyone how great it is, and then they sue, then that's a big scandal story. But if they sued and mentioned Johnny Ive now, people will be like, what are they suing him for? He hasn't even done anything. And they're like, well, but he is doing stuff. It's like, I don't see any, where's the egg? I don't see anything like it. It's all behind the scenes now. So the timing of this is actually pretty good and allows them to not name him and to avoid this story because there is no focal point for it. There is no egg for us to look at and say, OpenAI came out with hardware and now Apple hates them. OpenAI is going to come out with hardware and that's why Apple hates them, but they haven't done it yet.
Yeah. Anyway, so imagine the feelings between Johnny Ive and his former and now current again team, whoever moved over, and it sounds like it's a lot. There must be some pretty bad blood between them and Apple because first of all, they all left. So they probably weren't super happy with Apple. Second of all, Apple's probably not super happy with them for leaving and then pulling so many people with them. So obviously something has gone down in over the last few years. There has been some kind of significant turmoil in these relationships between these factions that used to be all within Apple. And look, now we have a new CEO. So probably there was something related to those dynamics of like...
Yeah, according to the most recent dithering, Tang Tan and Turnus hate each other from back in the Apple days, because basically it seems like they perhaps were up for the same type of thing ahead of hardware, and Turnus got it and Tang Tan didn't. So yeah, if you are Tang Tan and you're over at OpenAI and Apple already hates you and the new CEO personally hates you, lawsuit.
Right, and so there's all this drama going on between all these factions that used to be all at Apple. Now they've split up. Probably, explains a lot of the, different directions Apple has gone with hardware over the last few years that I think are universally better. But it probably helps explain a lot of those, machinations that we've seen over the last few years. That like obviously there are these factions and they don't like each other, and so Apple also super hates losing people to competitors. I mean, there was that famous Steve Jobs, collusion thing. They really don't like that. And so, yeah, Apple's going to feel really attacked. And I'm sure Apple was just looking for something that they could like bring up in some kind of legal threat to try to stop some of this. And it looks like OpenAI was totally happy to give them lots of things to the...
Yeah, I mean, again, transferring it to OpenAI might be tricky, but I'm sure the security team had all these people, as Casey said, dead to rights on if all this is true for a long time. It's just a question of, can we turn this into an OpenAI thing? The other angle in that discussion that has come up in our little circles is the broader discussion about when you leave a company, do you have to empty your brain of everything that you know, or can you leave, like, what do you get to leave with? Marco mentioned that obviously when you do work for a company, it is work for hire. The company owns the work. You don't in most companies. But California in particular has fairly strict rules as compared to the other states in the United States about not allowing employers to unduly restrain their employees, because part of the Silicon Valley culture is you work for one company, you learn something, you work for another, you go to another company, you do a startup or whatever. They don't want to allow things like draconian non-competes. I think non-competes in general are not even legal in California, where they say, oh, if you leave this company, you can't work in this industry for 2 years. Non-competes like that are legal in some states of the United States, but not in California, because it is against their culture of like, we started this company, then we leave to do a startup, then we compete. Like, but they want to see more competition. Similarly, I would imagine the laws about like, what do you get to take with you in your brain when you leave a company? Like if you learn a bunch of stuff at one company about like machining and metal finishing, obviously there's the various legal constructs like patents and trade secrets that you've signed an agreement that you're not going to reveal. But what about just your experience? Like, good ways to do things and how to organize people, and like, you take those with you, obviously. You can't, Apple doesn't own the things that you learned when you were there. And I'm sure there's a whole complex realm of law about, okay, well, you learned like best practices and how to organize things and what makes a good deal and a bad deal or whatever. But what about this one very specific thing that you're doing at OpenAI that is a quote unquote trade secret, and it is not just like a thing that you learned when you were there? And it's the same for programmers. Like, I can say in all my past jobs, I don't know how many web frameworks I wrote, starting with my very first web development job out of school. I think at various jobs, I've written multiple web frameworks. And each time I went to a new job, I didn't take my old web framework with me because I didn't want it, because I had learned so much since then. But when I wrote my next web framework, it built on all the knowledge of my previous web frameworks. And I kept doing that and making better and better and better ones. I was taking my knowledge and experience with me. I was not taking the code with me. But I was definitely taking like, oh, last time I did it this way. And I learned that this is good and this is bad. And if you squint at one of my web frameworks, you're like, that looks kind of like the one you did at your last job, only I see this change, and this change. It's all new code, but I'm taking my experience with me. That's what makes you a more valuable employee as you gain experience, is that you learn things. And that's why someone hires you for more money at another job. And again, I feel like California is one of the best states. I said strict before, but like strict in terms of defending employees' rights to compete, to leave one company and to go to another, or to leave one company and start their own company. And we can't say, oh, that's not fair. You learned a bunch of stuff at Apple, and that's the only reason your startup is successful. It's like, yeah, I learned stuff, and now I'm smarter, and I'm making my own company, right? So that also is kind of against Apple on the broader issue of like, you took things that you learned and went to another company to compete with us. Like, yeah, that's how it's supposed to work. Is OpenAI a California company? I don't actually know. I'm assuming they're all incorporated in Delaware, but I'm assuming these lawsuits are going to be in California.
Yeah, presumably. And I agree. Like, I think it's a very clear, in broad strokes, Apple can own the work that you did at Apple. Again, documents, products, hardware, like they can own that.
Source code.
Yeah, so exactly. But they can't own your expertise. Now, we're not lawyers again, and so the definition of what is considered a trade secret, that is probably going to be possibly argued here. That's going to be pretty important, because that sounds like it's a somewhat squishy concept. But yeah, like I think like if you are really good at metal finishing, and OpenAI hires you, and they say, hey, we want you to give us some really good metal finishing expertise, unless certain things are patented by Apple, I think you can probably bring them your metal finishing knowledge in most cases.
And if they're patented, the whole point is the patent allows that to be shared, but then there's perhaps a licensing fee. The whole point of patents is we tell the world, but you don't get to use it for free.
The idea of hiring away Apple's people with competitive salaries and, offers of freedom or excitement that they might not have at Apple, that's fair game. And Apple, they are a big established company with mostly big established mature product lines. So yeah, people are going to get the itch and want to go do something new. And Apple historically is somewhat stingy with salaries from what we've heard. And so, OpenAI is able to throw around some cash, or Meta famously throws around big salaries. Like, of course they're going to be able to hire away some of Apple's people. And every time somebody at Apple gets promoted, there's going to be someone who didn't, and they're going to be upset, and maybe they'll be easy to hire away as well. And people are going to move around. Apple does the same thing. Like I saw somebody saying at Breeze By earlier that like this is kind of what Apple's accused of doing to Massimo, where like they kind of just hired away their people and had them recreate blood oxygen sensing technology in the Apple Watch. Like this is what happens in companies. This is fair game. As long as you don't cross certain lines of things like stealing documents and stuff like that is obviously a line that they should not cross. And it sounds like they did just walk right past it and stomp all over it. But the idea of restricting a company from hiring away your people with compelling offers and then having those people do similar work for them, Apple doesn't own those people. And if Apple does not want to lose those people, they should pay them better if they need to, or work with them in whatever other things that they want if they can, and recognize that that's not going to always be the case. Again, like the promotion situation of like somebody gets promoted, well, someone else didn't. There's not that much Apple can do about that. And so if those people want to leave, they're going to leave. Or if somebody wants to leave the giant mothership of Apple and go work for some, fast-moving, exciting startup, like Apple probably can't do much to keep those people either. And so
that happens all the time. And people end up returning to Apple a lot, too.
Yeah, all the time. That's just part of working in this business and many businesses. So this is going to happen. And Apple is going to put out a whole bunch of bravado about how they own all their stuff. And I'm sure some people in Apple believe that they own a lot more of these employees' talents than they really should. But at the end of the day, it does sound like a lot of really clear lines have definitely been crossed by OpenAI. And I'm not surprised to hear that. Like, going back to my earlier comments, like, a lot of these people have very strong personalities, let's say. Amateur psychologists would have a field day with a lot of these people trying to figure out what exactly their issue is. These are some really strong personalities at these levels. And so many of them have no problem lying. I mean, geez, Sam Altman has basically made a career out of it. Like, many of these people are, really showing like significant sociopathic kind of behaviors of just like totally disregarding morality, effects on people, rules, laws, fraud. So yeah, you're going to see a lot of this kind of behavior at these levels. I'm not surprised, honestly. Like, all of these allegations, assuming that even any of them are true, like, none of them actually surprise me. They're kind of galling in terms of like, wow, I can't believe they actually thought they would get away with that. But think about who you're dealing with here. Yeah, of course, these people are going to try stuff like this. Again, not a lawyer. Apple probably has a pretty good case. Like, I don't think Apple would do this if they didn't. And I don't know if they're going to get all of what they want, but I bet they're going to get some of what they want.
Yeah, when Apple initiates a lawsuit, there's usually a pretty good chance that they think they're going to win it. When they're the victim of a lawsuit, you never know how it's going to go because you don't know what Apple did. But when they initiate a lawsuit, they're so conservative about this. And in this particular case, you would imagine if you were to remove most of these personalities, you were like, oh, well, OpenAI will just settle this because they've got tons of money. And what you do in the cases like this is you throw money at it and you make the problem go away, because the last thing OpenAI needs is some like long legal battle and bad press and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, just settle. But then we get to the personalities involved. And I'm of two minds about that. One, if there's like personal animosity, like again, between Turnus and Tang Tan and maybe Johnny Ive and Apple and Sam Altman and Apple, like, cause again, we started this with Snell's thing with OpenAI was putting out these little leaks that like, we're thinking about suing Apple like a long time ago. So there was already bad blood, probably because they knew they were going to be sued at that point or whatever. So that bad blood exists. And you're like, okay, well, when you have these big personalities and bad blood, on the one hand, you're like, oh, that means OpenAI is not going to do the smart thing. And instead of settling like they could with their giant pile of VC money right now when they're rolling in it, they're going to, dig in and say, no, we're going to fight this, right? Which I think would be dumb. Like, why fight it? Settle, right? Just settle and make this go away. But maybe they'll fight it. But then I look at the specific personality of Sam Altman, who seems like so incredibly feckless and just not. He's more like, a pathological liar and untrustworthy or whatever, but also not particularly like brave or like he's not Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg, I can imagine like digging in and being like, we're going to fight this. Or Steve Jobs, for example, of course, would dig in his heels and fight this way past the edge of logic. But I don't know what Turnus is like in that regard, although it seems like he's okay with this lawsuit. But Sam Altman, even though he has a strong personality and has no problem lying, I would imagine he's not like, he doesn't seem like a fighter to me. Like in the Elon Musk lawsuit and everything. I mean, Elon, it's not hard to look better than Elon when you're on the stand or whatever. And I think Sam Altman did, but he just seems so like just like a wet dish rag full of lies. Like, it's just not like I don't see him going like, we will fight Apple to the bitter end about this lawsuit. So I think he'll settle, assuming Apple's willing to settle. And I think Apple would be willing to settle. They just want to stop this from happening. I don't know. Well, we'll see how this goes.
Is it that Apple just wants to stop this from happening, which I think is true? And by this, I mean both the exodus of employees and the hardware fantasies of OpenAI.
Oh, this lawsuit's not going to stop either one of those.
Well, that's true. But the other thing, and I don't remember if I heard this on Dithering or somewhere else, but somebody pointed out, maybe on Upgrade, that this is a really great opportunity to do a whole lot of discovery. And I think that's very appealing to Apple because they can.
But that's why OpenAI was settled, to avoid that.
Oh, I agree. But if OpenAI really wants to go for broke, that's not going to end well for OpenAI, I don't think. And coming back to something that I think Marco said earlier, it was either one of you, but somebody said earlier, if you don't want to have an exodus, here's an idea. Pay your people better. And I know that Apple employees make a butt ton of money, but I also know it costs a butt ton of money to live in the San Francisco Bay Area. And everything I've understood from many, many, many different people inside and outside of Apple is that amongst Silicon Valley and amongst the like Facebooks and Googles and Apples and Netflixes of the world, Apple's like really cheap from everything I've ever understood when it comes to salary. Now, granted, they have, stock programs for their employees and non-salary compensation and so on and so forth. But here's a novel idea, which was said earlier, and I would like to agree with. Maybe pay your people a little more. And I think that might solve a portion of these problems. Now, it's still not the new shiny over at OpenAI. You know, the iPhone is new-ish and shiny-ish, but it's not new shiny like whatever they're doing at OpenAI. But I think some of this could be solved by having more competitive salaries. And I'm pretty sure Apple could afford it.
Well, the flip side of that is something we've discussed in the past, which is, first of all, you're never going to compete with the giant bucket of investment money that is sprinkling down on OpenAI, nor will you compete with the apparent huge pile of money that Facebook is willing to throw into these efforts. And it probably would be foolish for Apple to pursue that. Apple has chosen not to pursue the creation of a frontier model, which costs billions and billions of dollars, so they're not doing that. But how much would you have to pay to compete with like the Facebook salaries? Like, do you want to do that? Is that a good idea? And the second aspect is the thing we talked about back in the JG days, where they were hiring AI people to JG's team to do Siri or whatever, and paying those people way more than other Apple employees. And that makes the other Apple employees go, hey, I'm over here working on iOS. You know, the thing that makes actual money? Why are all these new employees getting paid more than me? I've been here for 8 years. And you're like, you can't just like, okay, we'll raise all Apple employees to the bubble and Zuckerberg inflated prices of 2023, 2024 for AI things. That's also a bad decision. So in some respects, as Marco pointed out, you just have to take it. You just have to. I mean, I'm not saying they shouldn't raise their salaries to be more competitive across the board, but to the sane baseline, not to the $100 million MBA star AI researcher line, because that line is not sustainable. And even if you just raise it for one group of people, all that does is make your other employees even more disgruntled. It is not feasible to say every Apple employee needs to have AI bubble salaries. So you just say, look, we know people are going to leave. And, you know, we shouldn't try to stop them with salary and perks because we won't be able to. And even trying would distort things so much in Apple that when the bubble pops, what are we going to tell everybody? Oh, now the bubble popped, all your salaries are going back down to sane levels. No, you're not going to do that either. So it's just a fact of life. I mean, it's the same reason people have always left Apple to try to do something else. Like, Apple is there to be steady and reliable and a place people can circle back to after their startup fails or after they get sick of working for Zuckerberg or whatever. And so they're fulfilling that role. I do agree with you that they probably should be less stingy than they are, especially since a lot of their stinginess relied on the fact that Apple stock was just always going up and up and up. And by the way, it still kind of is going up and up and up, but not to the levels it used to be. And also the whole, like, don't you want to work in the games industry? Don't you want to work for Hollywood? People's willingness to take less in exchange for being what they consider in a really high profile place. Like, it's the reason the game industry exploits workers. It's the reason Hollywood exploits them, because they're like, oh, I've always wanted to work on games. I always wanted to be in Hollywood. I've always wanted to work for Apple. So Apple takes advantage of that. And to the degree that Apple does that, they should stop, because the shine is a little bit off that apple. Haha, see what I did?
Wow.
But yeah, they can't. It's unwise to pursue the unsustainable salaries that everyone else is getting, and we'll see how it works out for those companies. I bet speaking of Facebook, the people who went over there and got those huge salaries, but then realized that they're going to have that Facebook is going to be looking at the keyloggers that are installed on other computers to make sure they're all working hard enough or whatever. I wonder if they're reconsidering their life choices.
Yeah, seriously. Before we move on, though, we should say that OpenAI's response was as follows. On the 10th of July, Drew Pusateri, who is apparently head of comms at OpenAI, said, our statement in response to this suit, we have no interest in other companies' trade secrets. We remain focused on building innovative technology that empowers people everywhere.
Nothing. It says nothing. It was probably written with ChatGPT.
We have no interest. Why would we care about other people's trade secrets? That sounds boring. I'm not interested. Are you interested? I'm not interested in other people's trade secrets. If you gave them to me, I wouldn't even look at them.
And then on the 14th, 4 days later, OpenAI's statement is reported by Bloomberg. While we take these allegations seriously, we're not aware of any evidence that this complaint has merit. We believe in fair competition and allowing people the freedom to work wherever they choose, and we're focused on building innovative technology that empowers people everywhere.
I believe Apple will soon make you aware of evidence.
Yes, we're not aware of any evidence of this.
Well, they haven't seen any yet. They've just seen allegations.
I'm sure the person who wrote that statement maybe can say they are not aware of any evidence of that. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that it hasn't happened. It doesn't mean that they aren't aware of the event happening, but they just need evidence. Like,
prove it.
Yeah, right. Like, that's like, if I don't pay my taxes, like, I'm not aware of any evidence that I didn't pay my taxes. That doesn't say I paid them. Mm-hmm. Like there's a lot of ways, there's a lot of holes in these words.
Yeah, that's why the supposed comms person, I don't know if he's the head of comms, but his bio on Twitter was comms at OpenAI. I love the fact that he's on Twitter. Says, we have no interest in other companies. Just like, if you can't put out a denial as your first response, don't say anything. Don't say, we're not denying it, but I'm just saying, we don't even like that stuff. Why would we have that? We don't even like it. We don't even like trade secrets. We would never do that. We have no interest in that.
Yeah, what an incredible defense.
I would say that the comms department at Apple has a little bit more experience and maturity when it comes to dealing with these stuff than a very young company like OpenAI. And we'll see how this goes. But my advice to OpenAI is just settle.
Well, if that's even an Apple, look, Apple has lost hundreds of people to OpenAI. How do you know they would even be willing to settle? Apple probably, if Apple thinks they have no real risks of, in discovery.
Oh, how do you know Apple will be willing to settle? I think Apple's willing to settle.
Maybe, but for what?
Because they want to declare victory. They want to say, we've reached a settlement and OpenAI paid us this amount of money.
Here's the thing. Apple, in this particular context, Apple probably wouldn't have brought this suit if they thought that discovery would be a big risk for them. So they probably think, look, if you dump a bunch of Apple emails out into court that, around this particular area, we have nothing to hide. We're fine.
Is it going to be worse than the App Store emails?
Right, exactly. Whereas, if OpenAI gets their stuff dragged into court, who knows what that's going to be? And by the way, OpenAI is trying to IPO pretty soon, probably. So, this is bad for them, timing-wise. Apple did not do this without care. Apple knows exactly what they're doing and when they're doing it. This is a pro move on Apple's side. We'll see what happens, but if I were Apple, I don't think I'd want to rush to a settlement. Because OpenAI, they're going to keep getting more and more desperate as their IPO dreams get closer, and if things start looking very bad for them, and if a bunch of discovery stuff starts coming out like that, Apple is probably in a pretty strong position on that. And who knows how if this actually goes to court and goes to trial and goes all the way to the end of a trial, that those are very big ifs. But if this actually gets that far, who knows if Apple would actually, quote, win or not. But they can inflict a lot of pain on OpenAI in the meantime with dragging them out into all of this, dragging all this into the public, all the discovery coming out, and casting doubts maybe on some of that IPO. So Apple's in a pretty good position here.
I would imagine that the ChatGPT and iOS deal is probably going to lapse and not be renewed, though.
Yes, and also once you use iOS 27, you're yeah, there's no need for that anymore. Siri has taken most of the need for that away, and the OpenAI deal of having it be integrated. But if you ask Siri to, hey, also please ask ChatGPT to tell me this, that's so clunky and less necessary now. No one's going to really be doing that anymore. It honestly, it never worked that well to begin with.
Hopefully that'll be replaced next year by the thing that was rumored to this year's WWDC, which is a third-party pluggable. Hey, if you want to use something, you want to use a different chatbot because the EU is making us, you can plug in, some other company's chatbot besides Siri in there, and then OpenAI would just do that just because they have to, because Anthropic would do it and all that other stuff. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. But the specific, very particular deal that Apple referenced, I don't know what the expiration date on that is, but I feel like neither one of the parties is going to be excited about renewing it.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
And by the way, if you're an Apple employee and you want to go work somewhere else, go for it. If you can get a higher pay somewhere else that in something that you're really excited about, do it.
Except unless it's at Facebook, don't do it.
Yeah, don't do that. That's just a step down. But feel free to take your expertise wherever you want. You are valuable without committing crimes on the way out. You have a ton of value. If they're going to hire you, this is like counseling. If they're going to hire you, they're going to like you for you. Don't put yourself in hot water by bringing out documents and crap. You don't need to do that. You are so screwing yourself on that. And if you're that valuable, you're going to get the job no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, I can't understand the math that these OpenAI employees did in order to make this thing seem like a good idea. And they're going to be screwed for getting any sort of job in any of these fields anytime in the future, because clearly they're not trustworthy, if assuming this all is proven in some way, shape, or form. But I mean, it sure would make me think twice if I saw one of these names on a resume that crossed my desk. Like,
or even just like, if you're hiring somebody and you're like, hey, can you bring a bunch of internal stuff from your old company? Don't you, for a second, think ahead? Like, well, when they leave my company, are they going to do the same thing?
Not to mention, that's a really skeevy thing to ask me to do. Maybe I don't want to work here.
Exactly, yeah. And the people do it.
Yeah, please commit some crimes on your way out of your old company, but your first day here, please sign our employee handbook policy.
Just bananas.
All right, thank you to our sponsors this episode, Squarespace, Claude, and Quince. And thanks to our members who support us directly. You can join us at atp.fm/join. One of the many, many perks of membership is ATP Overtime, our weekly bonus topic. This week in Overtime, we're going to be talking about Sony having announced the end of PlayStation game discs. End of an era. Covering that and more in Overtime. atp.fm/join to hear it. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week.
Now the show is over. They didn't even mean to begin, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. John didn't do any research. Marco and Casey wouldn't let him, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. And you can find the show notes at atp.fm. And if you're into Mastodon, you can follow them at CASEYLISS. So that's Casey Liss, MARCOARMENT, Marco Arment, SIRAC, USA Syracuse. It's accidental. They didn't mean to. Accidental. Tech podcast so long.
So my intention is to do kind of a twofer after show, because I think I have two things to talk about. Both should be pretty quick. Famous last words. First of all, last week we were on vacation. We had our second beach trip of the year with some dear friends of ours. And I wanted to talk about vacation results specifically around nerd stuff. And if you recall, when we went to Cape Charles a few weeks ago, I was using the Unified Travel Router in the car and was not sure how that would work out in the house, because the travel router, while I adore it, it's not the strongest thing in the world. And in the Cape Charles house, what's nice is the internet happens to come in. Unfortunately, it's like crappy cable internet, but it happens to come in roughly the center of the house. And so the travel router actually mostly did great, both in terms of performance and distance and everything else. But this particular vacation, it's a bigger house. It's a 2-story house instead of a 1-story house. And the internet comes in the corner. Now, I will say that the internet went from crappy cable internet to fiber. They apparently, since last year, it's the same house we were in last year, but apparently they've added fiber to this section of North Carolina that we visited, which was incredible. And I loved it. And astonishingly, the actual fiber optic line was in like a jack on the wall. You know, like with Verizon, the fiber optics is generally speaking terminated outside, and then Ethernet runs into your house. In this case, in one extreme corner of the home, that's where a fiber optic line was coming out of the wall and going into like a combination ONT router situation. But I figured, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the UTR, the Unified Travel Router, and I'm going to see if it works at all and gets anywhere near the distance I need it to get. And this is not a gigantic house by any means, but it's, like I said, it's 2 stories, et cetera, et cetera. And I have to tell you, in the primary bedroom, which was in the opposite corner of the house, unsurprisingly, it was very spotty reception from the Unified Travel Router. But basically everywhere else, it was really good. So this little travel router that's roughly the size of, I don't know, like 10 credit cards stacked on top of each other worked astonishingly well. I was very, very proud of that little feller, and I thought it was really cool. And so I don't know if I would be happy to take questions if you have any, but I just thought I'd share that the $100, which is also an incredibly good deal, especially for Unify, the $100 Unify Travel Router did great. I was very proud of it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love how, like, you know, we're in this weird situation now with RAM and SSDs being super expensive, but like in general, most technology these days is so unbelievably cheap and capable.
Yeah.
I like, we are in such an embarrassment of riches in terms of like overall technology just being so good and so affordable compared to, you know, where it was 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Like it just, again, it's a bit of a roller coaster sometimes. Like, it doesn't always go in this direction and not exclusively in this direction, but the overall trend is very, very clear. Things are so, like, what you can do now with $100 worth of hardware is so amazing.
On that front, that brings up the one question I have about your travel router obsession.
Yes.
Since technology is advancing, as you noted, this place is like, oh, they have upgraded to fiber. Doesn't it also mean that like all the crappy vacation houses that we rent should be getting better and better Wi-Fi, and therefore making it so that we don't need travel routers because the home Wi-Fi actually spans the whole house and works?
So that's actually a very, very reasonable question. And a couple of things about that. First of all, I find that generally speaking, Wi-Fi is an afterthought at these places. Like, obviously they know they need to provide some form of Wi-Fi some way, somehow. But it seems to me that generally speaking, they don't really think about it at all. They just use whatever the ISP provides and they walk away. So in the Cape Charles vacation house, it happens to be like, it's not Comcast. I forget who it is off the top of my head, but it's effectively like a Comcast cable modem, square in the center of the house. That's your Wi-Fi. I hope you like it.
But those things have been getting better too. That's my point. Like, those suck and they're lagging behind. Obviously, they're not on the cutting edge of technology, but they do change over the course of decades. And I would imagine that the current ones aren't as awful as they used to be.
I think you're right, and broadly that is true.
It's a low bar, though.
It is a low bar. In the vacation house from last week, they had this odd looking, and I think I took a picture of it because I was trying to identify it. I didn't know what it was, but they had this odd looking like gray orb, for lack of a better word. I'll see if I can find a picture and put it in the show notes or put a link to the device. I don't have it handy, but it had Ethernet going into it. It was plugged into the wall and had Ethernet going into it. And I had no idea what it was. I didn't know if that was like some sort of ONT, but it didn't have fiber going into it. Long story short, I eventually figured out it was effectively like one Eero mesh. It's not literally Eero, but it was like an Eero mesh base station. And so there was one of those downstairs in this particular home. In the upstairs, it was like a loft situation, and almost line of sight from the one downstairs was one upstairs. So they have some sort of mesh Wi-Fi, which honestly I didn't even touch. I never tried it, not once. But to your point, they're at least trying, which is good. But the other thing that's important about the Unified Travel Router, and I also brought with me a GL iNet router because those tend to be far more powerful. They're also quite a bit bigger, but they're far more powerful. And what I love about the UTR in part, we spoke about this last time we spoke about the UTR, was that it has support for teleport, which is Unify's no config WireGuard. If you're squint, it looks kind of like Tailscale, but it's also very different than Tailscale. But the point is, once I got the travel router up and running, it connects to my house, and every bit of our internet goes through my house here in Richmond. And although I don't think anyone is doing like data logging or anything like that, it just gives me peace of mind to know that whatever is happening in this house with my devices, they can't touch it because it's encrypted and going through Richmond. Is that a little bit bananas? No, it's a lot bananas, but that's how I am. This is the way I am, and I'm sorry. Also, Marco, I owe you an apology. It was not $100 for the Unified Travel Router, $80. $80 for this thing. And if you are in the Unify ecosystem, if you don't have one, you're cheating yourself. It's delightful. I absolutely love this thing. I was astonished that it worked as well as it did. For events like this, I'll probably travel with a GL iNet because, again, I'm me. I enjoy doing this stuff. This is kind of a hobby for me. It is not necessary. I understand that. It's totally overkill, but here I am. However, speaking about GL iNet, I wanted to bring up something else. It turns out that I didn't know this until we talked about the KVM. I think it was a couple of weeks back or maybe a month ago now. But we actually have a couple of listeners that work at GLINet, and they were kind enough, not as a sponsorship or anything like that. They never said I had to talk about anything. This is completely of my own accord. They sent me a couple of devices and said, hey, you might like these. That was all that was said. There was no guarantee of anything, not sponsored content or anything like that. But they sent me, among other things, a Comet Q, which I feel like I kind of know GLINet's product line, And I had no idea this was a thing. So we talked several weeks ago about the KVM. This is the thing that has native tailscale support. You plug USB into a device, like, into a computer, and you can control that computer remotely. And it's as though it's physical hardware. As far as the computer's concerned, it's an actual keyboard, an actual mouse, etc. This is largely the same thing. It is basically a remote control device, a KVM kind of device for a computer. But what's fascinating about this is it works with anything that uses, I think it's DisplayPort over USB-C. I forget, shoot, I should have looked it up beforehand. I didn't, I apologize. But basically, oh yes, there it is. ComicQ works with any device whose USB-C port supports DisplayPort Alt mode for video output. This includes, but is not limited to, laptops and mini PCs, Android phones, iPhones and iPads.
What?
iPhone 15 and newer. Yes. iPhone 15 and newer, or all iPads Pro, or iPad Pros 2018 and newer, iPad Air 4th generation and newer, iPad Mini 6th generation and newer, and iPad 10th generation and newer. What this means is you can get one of these little dinguses, which is like a little circle. It has an on-screen display, which is very neat. You can plug this into basically any modern iPhone, excluding the 16E and 17E and the Air. Sorry, Air folks. But any modern iPhone, so 15 or newer, 15 Pro and newer, etc. And you can control that device remotely. Now, what you're going to do is ask me, why would you want to do that? And I have no fucking idea. But the fact that you can do it.
Well, I can tell you a couple
so
ideas.
Cool. Okay, well, I would love to hear some ideas because I think this is the coolest device I've seen in a long time that I have no idea why I would use it. So talk to me.
Two things. Number one, I can have two times when I would have needed this recently. One, it wouldn't have solved the problem, but one, it would have. So, when dealing with audio issues at the restaurant, if I am like on the mainland, John, at a moment when
New Jersey,
the subwoofer, like the subwoofer volume is off for some reason, like the app to configure the mixer and like electronic controller and everything that we use is an iPad app.
Oh, this is for you, Marco.
Right, and so I already have one of my Mac Minis is in the restaurant. That way, if I need access to the network there, I have it through Tailscale. So I can be on the network, but I can't control an iPad remotely. And it doesn't work running an iPad mode on the Mac. Like the app doesn't work that way. So I could theoretically have an iPad there with this and be like running that app and could, control it remotely. That's number one. Number two, Tiff broke her iPhone a couple of weeks ago. We were outside, we were walking, and she tripped, took a moderately bad fall. Don't worry, she's okay. But she landed on her iPhone, and it totally destroyed the screen to the point where the screen would not turn on.
Oh, no.
So we had to, okay, crap, go make an appointment at the Apple Store. She has Apple Care, so, we'll go get it fixed or whatever. But the question we had was like, is it backed up? Like, is it like, when's the most recent iCloud backup? And how do we figure this out? It's like, well, I can try to restore it onto another phone. That's going to take a few hours. The Apple Store closes in, 2 hours or whatever. So it's like, that won't be done in time. Let's, we went back to the house and we could tell like if you squeeze the button, it would vibrate. So we could tell, okay, it's still on. So we just have to like plug it in. I'm like, I know iPhones support monitors and keyboards and mice externally. I'll just plug it in. Okay. Well, the problem is it was on but locked, and it had never been connected before to a monitor or a keyboard or mouse. And they have like, this similar to modern Macs, they have some kind of protection of like, they're not going to just allow a USB device to just connect without authorization. How do you authorize it without a screen to type in your passcode? So I thought, great, VoiceOver. So I held down the Siri button to try to say, turn on VoiceOver. But that didn't work because the phone was locked and she had it set to not allow Siri while locked. I'm like, oh, all right, can't do that. I'm like, oh, what about iPhone mirroring on her Mac? Well, she had never done it, so that wasn't authorized either. So that didn't work. Siri didn't work. There was a point where I could plug in like a USB-C, the little like foldy portable monitors. I could plug one of those in and get the screen to show up. But the problem is I couldn't unlock the screen because the touchscreen wasn't working. Now, I could plug in a keyboard, but there's only one port. And if you unplug the monitor to plug the keyboard in, it somehow relocks itself. So even if you get the passcode screen to display on the screen, and then unplug the screen and plug the keyboard in and type in the passcode on the keyboard, it doesn't work for whatever. I guess it relocks or something. So I thought, oh, what about a USB hub? A USB-C hub. So I plug in a USB-C hub with the keyboard and the monitor at the same time, and that doesn't work because apparently in this pre-unlock state, hubs don't work. Only a display will work because a hub is like a USB device you have to authorize. So like I was running into all these different security barriers. I'm like, maybe, just maybe, in this context, this dumb thing might have given me like one more option, maybe. Probably not, but what if I could like pre-authorize this on all of our iPhones? Because what ended up happening was like, we couldn't get into the phone. Like, if the iPhone screen is broken, and to the point where like touch also does not work on it, you have no way into that phone. Like, unless you have authorized one of these things ahead of time. And even then, like, all these methods that you use to authorize remote control things on iPhones, they all time out after a while. So like, if I use iPhone mirroring on my Mac, that's going to stay authorized for what, 3 days, and it's going to make me log in with my passcode again. So like, I don't know. This probably wouldn't have saved me there, but maybe it could have been one more option. So anyway, that I might have used it there, but I definitely would use it for the restaurant iPad situation.
Yeah, so I've tried plugging it into my iPhone, which I had not plugged it into before. I did try it with my iPad, but I'm just now trying it with the iPhone, and I'm definitely... I can see the screen. You know what? I Face ID'd. I was about to say that it said, you must unlock to authorize this accessory. And I didn't unlock the phone, but I looked at it with the screen active. You know what I'm saying? And so I accidentally Face ID'd. So I think it would have been the same problem here, but maybe you would have been able to see but not interact. But yeah, I mean, what this does is it puts the iPhone in a web browser. How about this? If you live in the EU and you want iPhone mirroring, you could get one of these bad boys. I'm sorry, I'm so mean. But yeah, I mean, all kidding aside,
I don't think they have a sense of humor about that yet, but they probably should.
They probably should. But truly, for your iPad in the restaurant, what I would say is next time you're in the restaurant, like, do the dance of like authorizing this once, and even if what you did was like put it in a drawer somewhere and said to somebody, if there's an issue,
right,
the first thing you do is plug this in, and the second thing you do is you call me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that might really set you up really nicely. And I genuinely don't know how much this costs. I don't think it's terribly expensive.
No, it's on sale right now for $110, but unfortunately it is back ordered until late August.
Oh, there you go.
So at least late August. And apparently, if I'm not a VIP customer, I don't get priority access. So this will not be here for this restaurant season. Maybe next year.
Unfortunately not. But again, like I think this is just one of those devices that I'm happy that it exists, even though I have no idea why I would need it. Like, well, that's not entirely fair, actually. If I didn't already have the PoE powered KVM that we talked about a few weeks ago, then I could potentially use this. But I think this is an incredibly cool device, and I had no idea that something like this existed for iOS devices, which I thought was neat.